On behalf of the First Unitarian Church, I welcome you to our worship service. One of our 7 UU principles is the inherent worth and dignity of every person. First Unitarian Church is a welcoming congregation, regardless of your race, spiritual beliefs, financial situation. No matter whom you love, you are welcome here. We are thankful you have joined us this morning. If you're a guest, we encourage you to visit our website, firstuuwilm.org, and sign up for our e-newsletter so you can keep current on what's happening in the church. Just a reminder of our in-service COVID guidelines. Please leave your mask on at all times unless you have a speaking role. Please sit in the designated rows and maintain social distancing between 2 seats between every household. We will not be singing in the sanctuary, but you are welcome to hum along or sing as loud as you want at home. We will not be having a coffee hour. However, we invite you, and that's all of you, to stay for our hybrid cafe 15 minutes after the service. And now let us prepare our hearts and minds for worship.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Larry Piers. I have the joy of being the minister here at First Unitarian Church of Wilmington. Why is it that you look so well rested this morning? It's great to see you in this well-rested form. Really appreciate it. If you happen to be visiting today for the first time or have not yet met you, please know that I stand at the door to the left over there at the end of the service, and I'd love to greet you and get to know you. Now, let me do this call to worship. Come, let us enter this space of hope and community. Come, let us enter this space with our sorrows and our joys, our passion and our compassion. Come, let us enter this space with the stories of our ancestors, for their strength and wisdom beats in each of our hearts. Come into this space present to the beloved companions who sit beside you and move beside you this morning. Come into this space mindful that together we are building a future for other generations. Come into this space and let us worship together.
If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to join me by lighting it now. We light this chalice to the words of Odette Folsom. This light we kindle is set in the lamp of our history. We inherit this free faith from the brave and gentle, fierce and outspoken souls, hearts and minds that have come before us. Let us be worthy inheritors of this faith, and through our good works, pass it boldly to a new generation.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again, whoever you are, ours is no caravan of despair. Wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come.
Please join me in affirming our mission. The First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action.
Hello, everyone. Have you ever had a bad day? And I don't mean just a regular old bad day, but a very bad day. I'm talking about a no good day. One of those days that is just horrible. A day that is simply terrible. You must know what I'm talking about. Have you ever had a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day? Well, someone many of us know about, Alexander, had just that kind of day recently. I went to sleep with gum in my mouth, and now there's gum in my hair. And when I got out of bed this morning, I tripped on the skateboard, and by mistake, I dropped my sweater in the sink while the water was running, and I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. At breakfast, Anthony found a Corvette Stingray car kit in his cereal, and Nick found a junior undercover agent code ring in his breakfast cereal box. But in my breakfast cereal box, all I found was breakfast cereal. I think I'll move to Australia. In the carpool line, Mrs. Gibson let Becky have a seat by the window. Audrey and Elliot got seats by the window too. I said I was being scrunched. I said I was being smushed. I said, if I don't get a seat by the window, I'm going to be carsick. No one even answered. I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. At school, Mrs. Dickens liked Paul's picture of the sailboat better than my picture of the invisible castle. At singing time, she said I sang too loud. At counting time, she said I left out 16. Who needs 16? I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. I could tell because Paul said I wasn't his best friend anymore. He said that Philip Parker was his best friend and that Albert Moyo was his next best friend and that I was only his third best friend. I hope you sit on a tack, I said to Paul. I hope the next time you get a double-decker strawberry ice cream cone, the ice cream part falls off the cone part and lands in Australia. There were 2 cupcakes in Philip Parker's lunch bag, and Albert got a Hershey bar with almonds, and Paul's mother gave him a piece of jelly roll that had little coconut sprinkles on the top. Guess whose mother forgot to put in dessert? It was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. That's what it was, because after school, my mom took us all to the dentist, and Dr. Fields found a cavity just in me. Come back next week, and I'll fix it, said Dr. Fields. Next week, I'll be in Australia, I said. On the way downstairs, the elevator door closed on my foot. And while we were waiting for my mom to go get the car, Anthony made me fall where it was muddy. And then, when I started crying because of the mud, Nick said I was a crybaby. And while I was punching Nick for saying crybaby, my mom came back with the car and scolded me for being muddy and fighting. I am having a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, I told everybody. No one even answered. So then, when we went to the shoe store to buy some sneakers, Anthony chose white ones with blue stripes. Nick chose red ones with white stripes. I chose blue ones with red stripes. But then the shoe man said, we're all sold out. They made me buy plain old white ones, and they can't even make me wear them. When we picked up my dad at work, he said I couldn't play with his copying machine. But I forgot. He also said to watch out for the books on his desk. And I was careful as could be, except for my elbow. He also said, don't fool around with his phone. But I think I called Australia. My dad said, please don't pick him up anymore. It was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. There were lima beans for dinner, and I hate lima beans. There was kissing on TV, and I hate kissing. My bath was too hot. I got soap in my eyes. My marble went down the drain, and I had to wear my railroad train pajamas. I hate my railroad train pajamas. When I went to bed, Nick took back the pillow he said I could keep, and the Mickey Mouse nightlight burned out, and I bit my tongue. The cat wants to sleep with Anthony, not with me. It has been a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. My mom says some days are like that.
Well, hopefully, you have not had that kind of day recently. As we prepare for our body prayer this morning, that I'll give you instructions to in just a moment, I want you to think about what are the places in your own heart and in your own life where you desire peace. Who are those in your own life that you want to wish more peace can abide with them? Where are the places in the world that crave and strive for peace? So we will be joining in a song that Leah Morris will be singing. And the way that we will be joining in is through some body motions. Peace with me, peace before me, peace to the right of me, peace behind me, peace to the left of me, peace above me, peace below me, peace within me. You'll get it. So when you are ready, if you are able, please stand and let's join in this body prayer together.
Peace be with me, peace before me, peace to the right of me, peace behind me, peace to the left of me, peace above me, peace below me, peace within. Peace be with you, peace before you, peace to the right of you, peace behind you, peace to the left of you, peace above you, peace below you, peace within. Peace be with us, peace before us, peace to the right of us, peace behind us, peace to the left of us, peace above us, peace below us, peace within. Peace be with us, peace before us, peace to the right of us, peace behind us, peace to the left of us, peace above us, peace below us, peace within. Peace within, peace within, peace within.
So we will now enter a time of shared silence. And during this time, bring to your heart and mind those who you have a special care or concern for, those in our community, those who need more compassion, more justice, or more love in our wider world. Following this shared silence, there will be an opportunity for you to say out loud their names or your concern. If you're joining us online, you can write in the chat box your name or the name that you want to hold up or the concern that you have. So may we join our hearts now during this time of shared silence. Now you may speak those names or that concern aloud if you choose to do so, or write in the chat. Let's listen to the concerns of one another's hearts. May all those names that were spoken and those that are unspoken find peace and healing on this day.
I hear your story. I see your courage. I listen gently with open heart. I hear your story. I see your courage. I listen gently with open heart.
The reading this morning is entitled Everybody is a Story by Rachel Naomi Remen, and it comes from her delightful book, Kitchen Table Wisdom. She writes, everybody is a story. When I was a child, people sat around kitchen tables and told their stories. We don't do that so much anymore. Sitting around the table, telling stories is not just a way of passing time. It is the way that wisdom gets passed along. The stuff that helps us to live a life worth remembering, despite the awesome powers of technology, many of us still do not live very well. We may need to listen to one another's stories again. What Rachel Naomi Remen says in Kitchen Table Wisdom is true. Everybody is a story. All of us are not composed merely of flesh and blood, of bone and muscle, of what hair we have or wish we had. All of us are composed more or less with what is visible and not visible to others. We are more than what is merely on the surface of our lives. Most of what we are composed of, maybe, is invisible to the eye, as the fox says to the little prince. We are composed of what qualities we embody, by what we cherish and what we hold dear. And we are composed by our values. We are composed by whatever memories and hopes we stash away for the times when we need them. And we are living in times in which we need them. Most significantly, we are indeed composed of stories that undergird what we cherish, what we value, and that hold our memories and point us toward our aspirations. The American poet and political activist who is famous for her poems about feminism and Judaism and social justice, Muriel Rukeyser, probably said it best. The universe is made of stories, not atoms. The universe is made of stories, not atoms. So what are the stories that you are made of? What stories are so woven into your life that if you tried to pull out any one of the story threads that you are composed of, you would seem to unravel. You would be missing something that's critical, that holds you together, that makes you, you. These are the kinds of questions that I would like to ask, and I would enjoy sitting around the proverbial kitchen table and asking you. Questions like these are the ways that we learn about one another. Through questions like these, we can build bonds and discover connections with one another. And since I am new to this congregation, I feel I have had a free pass over these first few months to engage in these kind of questions with many of you. So whether you are virtually or face-to-face, even masked right now, I want to say to you that I long for opportunities to linger in the stories that compose who we are. In fact, I recently discovered that there is absolutely no expiration date for any of our visas either. That all of us can still participate in these conversations with one another, no matter how long of a time you've been here or how short you have been here. We can we can still keep discovering each other. We can all still have not just the familiar, but the new conversations with one another, as if we are meeting each other again, all of us meeting each other again for the first time. We already know that we'll discover that we each have stories to tell about the journey that has taken us here to this congregation or to Unitarian Universalism. That there are stories about what keeps us here. There are stories that we tell about ourselves that are rooted in the past. And there are stories that are so present, or the stories that we have that lure us towards our future aspirations and ambitions. We can tell those stories to one another. And as we make efforts gradually but steadily to reconnect with one another during this pandemic time, we need not just pick up only our familiar conversations with one another. Instead, we may reconnect in some new ways and discover each other anew. I remember in my young adulthood that I spent almost a year living in an intentional Quaker community. And halfway through the year, I realized that we assumed that we knew each other. But then I came to the realization that really all we knew were the annotated versions of one another that we had composed up until that moment. There was so much more to discover about one another when we could look at each other with fresh eyes again and listen to each other with fresh ears. It's the same for us. There's so much more to know and to discover about the people who are sitting close to you and maybe even across the room from you right now, or those who are joining us by live stream. As Unitarian Universalists, we draw so much from our own life experiences and stories in our personal religion making. So to reflect more intentionally on our own stories and the stories of others is akin to reading pages of Scripture. I meant that flattery. You deserve it. Carol Oakes, in her book, Our Lives as Torah, from her Jewish tradition, offers this insight. She writes, the Torah stories didn't all happen at once, a long, long time ago. They continue to happen. So now it is our turn to respond to the great challenges they offer. We, like the characters that populate Genesis, must learn how to reconcile with our siblings, venture forth to unknown places, find God's presence in and through our wanderings. Oakes, in another book on Jewish spiritual guidance, offers this insight. A spiritual journey is not a competitive event. We can all be on a spiritual quest. God, or what is holy, or what is good, or godliness, whatever may suit your particular inclination, comes to each of us in the native language of the soul. Gradually, the language grows and expands, but no one grows in just the same way as someone else. We need to accept ourselves as we are and keep ourselves open to being changed and shaped. We learn something about life, about what matters, not from our own intentional reflections, not just from our own intentional reflections on our individual stories. We also learn so much from the stories of others. If we dare to do so, if we are open, if we are attentive, we might find touchstones of hope, capacities for faith and strength in the stories that we can tell one another. Too often we may read only the title of each other's story. We may scan the pages, but not dive deep enough into the wisdom that is actually there. What Rachel Naomi Remen says in Kitchen Table Wisdom, I got it right this time, is true. She declares that sitting around the table telling stories is not just a way of passing time. It is the way that wisdom gets passed along. You probably have your own memories and your own experiences of gathering wisdom in this way. Perhaps it was a time when you and a parent or grandparent sat at the kitchen table, or its equivalent, had a cup of hot chocolate or iced tea together, and the stories would just flow. Have you had times like that? Or the times when you and your partner first met and told the stories of your lives. And as the years go on, you may tell those same stories or your own stories that compose your relationship with one another. Remember the time when? Tell me about that time. These are at least some of the ways that we prompt one another to tell our stories and shed some wisdom with one another, some wisdom about life. Maybe you remember hearing the same stories again and again in your families. Yes, let me see some hands. Same stories. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And rather than complain, I just say cherish those stories. We probably really don't care sometimes because you know that there's something encoded in those stories that you can continue to discover together. Perhaps you've even found yourself telling the same stories that your grandparent or parent told you, or to your children, to your grandparent, to your spouse or partner, or friends. We weave our connections across time with the stories that we tell and retell. I remember this literal kitchen table wisdom event in my own life. As a child, I had my specific jobs assigned to me by my mother depending on what she was preparing for dinner. Most often, I was given onions and peppers to cut. Sometimes I was given eggplants to peel. And I almost always was given cloves of garlic to peel, to chop, and to mince into tiny little pieces. As I reflect back on that garlic, I can't help but think that being assigned garlic to chop, to mince, was the equivalent of the fidget toys given to some contemporary children to help with their focus and their attention. My fidgeting was to be channeled by taking a knife, crushing the garlic cloves, and slowly chopping these garlic pieces into the tiniest pieces that I could. My reward was to bring the cutting board over to the stove and slowly lower the garlic pieces into the oil and watch them sizzle. Even today, while cooking, I can't help but remember those early experiences. Yet what I remember about these cooking times was not just the activity of helping with the cooking, but the conversations I had with my mother during those times. Since she worked during the day, I went to school. These were precious times to be together. And these were the times that she would often tell me stories of her own life, about growing up in Italy during World War II, about going to the movies when she first arrived in New York as a way to continue to learn English, about the losses that she had experienced, and about the challenges she had faced. I felt she was sowing a little bit of wisdom in each of those stories that I could cultivate and draw upon many other times in my own life where I needed that wisdom. Sometimes it seems we tend to eat on the run, and the figurative kitchen table has lost its place as a source of unfolding wisdom from generation to generation. Wisdom may elude us because we may not take this intentional time to gather together and to hear one another's stories. The famed psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl, author, as many of you probably know, of the book Man's Search for Meaning, tells the story of the time that he was preparing to lead a seminar on the title, The Meaning of Life. A young man approached him and said, "Hey, Frankl, don't be angry with me. I've been invited to my future in-laws tonight. I really do have to go, and I can't stay for the lecture. Please be so kind and tell me quickly, what is the meaning of life?" Although there are decades between that incident and the time that we are in our contemporary, fast-paced, overly busy lives, we too often look for quick downloads rather than take the time to linger in the conversations. If the young man could have stayed for the conversation, what Frankl had to offer about the meaning of life was not a particular quick answer, but a series of stories from which his perspectives arose. Frankl's life work on meaning emerged because of those stories and experiences that he had. What Frankl had to say about the search for meaning arose out of his torturous and trying experiences of being imprisoned for 3 years in the concentration camps in Auschwitz, Dachau, and another concentration camp. At the same time, when the young man occurred, Viktor Frankl was about to give lectures only 11 months after he had been freed from his imprisonment in those concentration camps. Think about that. fresh from those experiences, he had wisdom to share. In fact, in 1941, when he was arrested, he had his unfinished manuscript about his life work sewn into the inside of his coat. He clutched it. He held on to it. And as soon as he arrived at the concentration camp, he had to relinquish this overcoat and let go of that precious manuscript. And at that point, Frankl could feel that the purpose of his life was over, but no, he decided that he did not want to abandon his commitment to this purposeful work of helping people with meaning. Instead, he took this time of imprisonment to study those who seemed to have thrived under the adverse conditions and those who didn't. He didn't just have an opinion to share, he had stories to share that evening of the lecture. It was during this time that he had finished observing those in the concentration camp. During this time when he had finished assisting his fellow prisoners to see what choices they could make, even in limited circumstances, that he was able to hone his own perspective about what helps people get through difficult circumstances. He developed, as some of you may know, a form of psychotherapy called logotherapy, which recognizes that we always have an inner freedom of choice that can never be extinguished by circumstances alone. That was the lingering lesson, the enduring wisdom that he wanted to pass on from his years in the concentration camp. The question really was not what is the meaning of life, but if that young man had stood around long enough, he would have discovered Frankl asking him directly, what gives meaning to your life? There's always something to discover in our stories of our lives. Sometimes we tell the same version of the story and miss what wisdom that wants to emerge. Sometimes we assemble the same plot lines, but we may leave some of the events of our life on the cutting room floor. In my study of narrative therapy, I learned that some of the ways to get beyond the familiar stories that we tell, particularly the stories that we tell that sound a lot like Alexander's terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, that those problem-saturated stories can often be restoried if we can ask ourselves some direct questions. So when we hear ourselves or another focusing just on the problem, we can also ask, when would you say you do not have this complaint? What are those times, those sparkling moments outside of our usual plot line? Are there times when the problem is not present? How do you explain the times when the problem is not present? What's different about those times and when the complaint is not present? What do you imagine others would say when the complaint is not present? And what would be the first sign that things are getting better? We have stories to tell, but sometimes the stories have us, and we need one another to see and to understand and to identify those things that we tend to leave out of our usual story. We need the questions and the interactions with one another. And so, I'm sure many of you have heard about StoryCorps. Have you seen StoryCorps or heard StoryCorps things on the right? Let me see some hands, a little more. Yeah, life, great, thank you. That helps me to just know there's a pulse in the room. Okay. So they provide opportunities for friends and neighbors and people from differing backgrounds or different times of one's life, like a mentor or whatever, to interview one another. They developed an easy guide for people to tell their stories, and most recently, tell their stories about what it's been like through this pandemic. Questions such as, what memory of this time do you think will stay with you? That evokes a story. Or a question like, if you could ask anyone from your life, living or dead, for advice on getting through this, who would it be, and what would you ask? And StoryCorps questions such as, what do you feel most grateful for in your life? What are some of the most important lessons you've learned in this life? These questions are only a few examples. There are many others, and of course you can make up your own. So I want to conclude this sermon with a strong invitation. As we continue to emerge from this pandemic, I want to propose that it's time to get reacquainted with one another in this congregation, with our friends, with our neighbors, relatives maybe who we haven't connected with. And one of the best way to do that, I think, is to participate in some of the practices of listening to one another's story. That's why I'm proposing that we participate as a congregation, as members and friends of this congregation, in the project of the Fetzer Institute and StoryCorps. They're calling it the Great Thanksgiving Listen. And they're inviting people of all ages, including children and youth, to interview relatives, friends, neighbors, mentors, people unlike yourselves who may have distinct experiences than you. All the resources you need are on their website, thegreatlisten.com. But we'll provide information through the e-news as well. I want to propose that for the next 2 months and through the holidays, that we each make a commitment to start at least one conversation with someone who we've not spent time with ever, or we've not spent time with for a while. People who we know may have some different experiences, or people who we desire to reconnect with. This is a congregation that spends a lot of time in Soul Matters groups and connection circles and brown bag, whatever those are called, brown bags, luncheons maybe. And so we have these so we're already good at that. And what I'm saying is, let's maybe go outside of our own familiar circle and reach out to someone else in this congregation who we may not yet know. Move into places in your own community, among your network of friends or coworkers. As we move through and beyond this pandemic, I think we have to be very intentional about doing this interpersonal and this inner work with one another. I hope that we can understand that our reopening is not just about reopening a building, that it's about reopening to one another. And reopening to those in our wider community of Wilmington who may crave a place of free thought, compassionate listening, and that we can invite into conversations and listen to one another. Imagine with me that over the next few months we will sit around virtual or real or proverbial kitchen tables, coffee shops, even places around this building, and use these tools that we'll make available to have conversations with one another, inviting people to tell their stories. Margaret Wheatley, in her book, Turning to One Another, emphasizes that there's no power greater than a community discovering what it cares about. Ask what's possible, not what's wrong. Keep asking. Be brave enough to start a conversation that matters. So that's what I'm asking of us. Conclusion, I want you to have this same image that I have. With your eyes closed right now, I want you to see that sign on 202, and I want you to see these words in lights. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a place where conversations that matter. So may it be.
O life that maketh all things new, the blooming earth, our thoughts within, our pilgrim feet wet with thy dew, in gladness hither turn again. From hand to hand the greeting flows, from eye to eye the signals run, from heart to heart the bright hope glows, the seekers of the light are one. One in the freedom of the truth, one in the joy of paths untrod, one in the soul's perennial youth, one in the larger thought of God. The freer step, the fuller breath, the wide horizon's grander view, the sense of life that has no death, the life that maketh all things new.
We invite you now to help sustain the work of our congregation. Doing your part helps us to be able to provide continued services and community support. There are 4 ways you can donate, as indicated on the screen. If you're attending in person, you can drop a check or cash in the box at the back of the sanctuary. You can mail a check to the church office. You can donate online via our website, or you can download the Vanco app on your smartphone. We thank you for your generous contribution. Please join me in dedicating our offering to the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action. We dedicate our lives, and these are offerings.
It sounds along the ages, soul answering to soul. It kindles on the pages of every Bible scroll. The psalmist heard and sang it, from martyrs' lips it broke, and prophets' tongues outrang it, till sleeping nations woke. From Sinai's cliffs it echoed, it breathed from Buddha's tree. It chimed in Athens' market, it hallowed Galilee. The hammer stroke of Luther, the pilgrim's seaside prayer, the oracles of concord, one holy word declared. It calls and and knowing not of time, our lost but catch the music of its eternal chimes.
Our closing words by James Baldwin. We must say yes to life and embrace it wherever it is found. For nothing is fixed forever, and forever and ever it is not fixed. The earth is always shifting, the light is always changing, the sea does not cease to grind down rock, generations do not cease to be born. And we are responsible to them because we are the only witnesses they have. The sea rises, the light fails, lovers cling to each other, and children cling to us. The moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us and the light goes out. I want to remind you that we have a virtual cafe following the service. Those of you who are here, you'll have an opportunity to join us in this space, masked and social distanced. 15 minutes following this service. Those who are online, join us. We want to have this chance to connect with you. I will be the moderator today, and John Claney will help me with the technical aspects of that.
To the words of Martha Munson, we extinguish this chalice here that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light your path as you leave today. May it guide your way until we are together again.